Hey everyone, welcome back to Pawpaw's Workshop. Today is going to be a little bit different. I've got a home repair to do. I'm going to be replacing the parts in the toilet, and I'm going to be using this kit. Now, only thing I need to replace is this part right here. The flapper is actually okay. So, unfortunately, when I went to the big box store, they did not have the kit without the flapper. The tools that you're going to need for this project is real simple. All you need is a little channel lock pliers. You're going to need a bucket and grab a towel or a sponge, maybe both. So I have a sponge here, and here's the surprising part. Grab you some food coloring. I'll show you how that is going to be real important later on in the video. At the end of the video, I've got a bonus tip for you. I like to be able to keep the tank really nice and clean. I don't like that scum buildup that you get in so many tanks that you see. My tank is actually spotless, and I'm going to show you a real easy tip to be able to keep it clean with literally no effort at all. The first step that we need to do is look to usually the bottom left side of the toilet, and you're going to find the water shutoff valve. So go ahead and turn that clockwise and close that. Now this one takes several revolutions. Some of the newer type valves, you only have to turn about a quarter of a turn. But at any rate, once that is off, now we can go ahead and move to the next step. Let's take the lid off of the tank. We'll set that aside so it won't get broken. Now let's take a look inside of the tank itself. I want to show you the fill valve. And you can see that it looks, well, quite old. And there's quite a few of the mineral deposits that are on this control valve, and it's time to be replaced. This overflow tube right here, you can see the water level, and I actually like the water level to be just a little bit lower. But this is the part that we're going to change. Now the flapper down at the bottom of the tank is perfectly fine, and we're going to leave that installed. We're not going to change that out. And of course, the handle itself is virtually looks brand new, so we're not going to change the handle either. But the first step, let's go ahead and drain the water. So I'm going to flush the toilet. I'm going to hold the handle down and try to get as much water out as I possibly can. What will be left at the bottom of the tank is roughly about a ½ inch of water. And that's where the sponge and the towel will come into play. And of course, you're going to need that bucket. I'm going to use the sponge to soak up as much of the water as I can. Now this sponge actually holds quite a bit of water, and I can squeeze it, push it down into the water, and get the sponge completely saturated. Once I've done that, then I'm going to grab the bucket, then take this totally saturated sponge and wring it out inside of the bucket and get rid of all the water that I possibly can out of that sponge. And then dunk it back into the tank again, soak up another big batch of water, and I'm going to repeat this process until the tank is dry at the bottom. Now this will take several times to be able to do it, to be able to gather up all the water. Remember, there's about a ½ inch of water left in the bottom of this tank. So it's going to take several times to be able to do this. Now if you want to use a towel, the towel may or may not work better, but I have found over time that the towel actually is a little bit messier when you're trying to get it from the tank over into the bucket. So I prefer using the sponge. At this point, you can see that I have just about all of the water out of the bottom of the tank. And I've got quite a bit of water that's now in my bucket. But there's a little bit more in there that I can get out, because this can make a mess. If you don't get all of the water out, when you take that fill valve off, the remaining water is going to go on the floor. And I really don't want that to happen. So just take your time with this and get all the water out of the tank before moving to the next step. At this point, you can see that virtually all of the water is out of the tank. There's really nothing else that I can do with the sponge, so the sponge has done its job. So I'm going to take the bucket and the sponge, and I'm going to set it aside, and I'm going to grab the towel. The towel is perfect to be able to get that last little bit of water out from the bottom of the tank. And again, I want this as dry as I can possibly get it. I really don't want the water dripping all over the floor when I remove that fill valve. And this is a good time too, if your tank is dirty, this is a good time to be able to clean out the tank and get it looking really, really nice. With all of this done now, it's time to go ahead and remove the water line from the bottom of the tank. And to do that, you're just going to turn it to the left, and that will unscrew it. We'll unscrew that. Now what you're going to notice is there's going to be a little bit of water dripping. I had placed a towel on the floor to begin with, but I'm also going to go ahead and add the sponge down on the floor also, just to be able to catch all that water. Now there's really not a lot of water there, but again, be prepared for it. And once you have this supply line off, you can just set it off to the side. You really don't need to do anything else with it, but you can see that little bit of water dripping. The towel and the sponge works just fine. Then next we want to be able to remove this nut. Now this nut is what actually holds the fill valve in place, and this is where the channel locks come into place. Now the camera shows it real well. I have to do this pretty much blind. So I'm just going to open up the channel locks to get to fit over the nut, and then I can just loosen it up a little bit to where I can go ahead and take this nut off with my hands. Usually it only takes about a quarter to a half a turn using the channel lock pliers to be able to get it loose enough so that you can go ahead and take this nut off with your hand. Now that the nut has removed, you're free to be able to remove the fill valve itself from the inside of the tank. I'm going to remove this water line and make sure that this little adapter is clean, and then I'll remove the fill valve out and I'll discard that into the trash can. Really don't need that anymore. And yes, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the tank with a paper towel and clean it out, make sure that it's clean as I can possibly get it. And I'm going to make sure that it's dry down there. So maybe I'm a little bit obsessive as far as wanting to have the bottom of this tank completely clean, but I think it pays off in the end. So now that this is all done and everything is dry and clean, it's time to put the new fill valve back into the tank. The first thing I want to do is take a tape measure, and I want to measure from the bottom of the tank to the top of this overflow tube. Now to me this is very important. Now if you look at that, it's about 8 3/4, and that's hard to see. So let me do this one more time so that you can actually see the actual measurement. So we'll put my finger right there on the tape measure, and I can bring it up and show you that it's right at about 8 3/4 inches. I'm going to make the adjustment on the fill valve to be able to have that set to the proper height. According to the instruction, we need to measure from this point right here on the fill valve down to the bottom where the bottom of the tank would be, and that is 8 3/4 inches. Now if I need to make the adjustment, I can twist that bottom portion and make the adjustment. Next, I'm going to put the new water line on right here at this point, and you can see a little blue knob there. You can actually adjust the flow of this, which is rather nice. Next, I'm going to take this plastic ring. That's going to be the lock ring that will go underneath the bottom of the tank. I'll drop the fill valve into the tank, right into the hole, and I like to be able to have it adjusted right about at this angle, and that will make it where this water line can plug directly into the existing little plug. Now this kit does have its own little plug that snaps in, but I'm going to use the one that's already on this overflow tube. It'll work just fine. Now we're pretty much working in reverse order. I'm putting on this plastic nut. I'm going to tighten it up hand tight and get it as tight as I can with my hand, and then I'm going to take the channel lock pliers and I'm going to tighten it again at about a quarter to a half a turn just to make sure that it's good and tight, because I do not want this to leak at all. So I'm real happy with that. I think that is going to be great. Now let's put back the supply line itself. You want to be real careful because you have plastic threads there, and you do not want to put this on where the threads are actually crossed. And when I first put it on, I could feel that it wasn't quite right. I had to take it off and I had to put it back on just to make sure. Be very, very careful with that, because if you strip those plastic threads, well, you pretty much are going to have to start over, because it's going to leak and that's going to be a problem. Take your time with this and make sure that you don't cross those threads. And again, hand tighten, Then I come back with the channel locks and turn about another quarter of a turn. Next, I'll just plug in this water line right into that overflow tube right there. That hose is below the top of the tank, so we're all set. We're ready now to turn the water back on. When we turn the water back on, the first thing you want to do is make sure that there are no leaks. We're going to turn this on all the way, and the tank itself will begin to fill. Now this one has that little blue knob where you can control the flow. I can turn it to the left to that minus sign, or I can turn it toward the positive, or that little plus sign, to increase the flow. And I want the flow to the maximum. The little gray knob there will actually control the water level itself. And by turning that knob left or right, I can get the water height filled in the tank exactly where I want it. I've adjusted the water flow where I'm turning it all the way in that positive direction to be able to get the maximum water flow into this tank. This is a good time to be able to double check to make sure that there are no leaks. So I'm actually touching and feeling the connections itself to make sure that there are no drops of water. Remember in the beginning I said you need some food color. Well, this is the time for it. I'm going to take the food color and just drop a few drops into this tank. Now the reason I want to do this is I definitely want to turn this water green. So I'm going to stir it around. I'm just going to take the channel lock pliers and just stir it around a little bit and be able to get this water all to turn green. So why am I doing this? I want to make sure that there are no leaks. That flapper itself, if it leaks, it's going to put a green color into the bowl itself. I'm also going to look at the supply line itself one more time to make sure that there are no drips. So if there's any water dripping down the hose itself from this point, it will be green color also. So in addition to feeling for wetness, I'm also looking for the green color. After about 10 minutes or so, looking into the bowl itself, you can see that it is absolutely clear, no leakage at all. Now I can flush the toilet. I'm going to have to flush this several times to be able to flush out all of that food coloring. Now I checked my other bathroom and I have the color in here, but look in the bowl after about 10 minutes. You can see just a little bit of that color. That means that flapper is good. You can also see the water lines on the bowl itself. So that means it's been leaking for a while. So this is going to be the next toilet that I tackle. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and flush out all of this food coloring and get that out, because this will be the next project. But back to the first toilet. Now, I told you there was a surprise. I'm going to use Dawn soap to be able to squirt into this tank. And that's it. You just squirt it around about once or twice, making the rounds, and that is it. Don't have to do anything else. Now this Dawn soap is heavier than the water. It is actually going to sink down to the bottom, and it'll begin cleaning that tank. Now the Dawn soap worked extremely well to be able to clean out that tank. Now if this is the first time that you've used this, you might need to be able to scrub out the tank with some paper towels just to be able to get it clean if the tank is really, really dirty. If it's just a little bit soiled, not a big deal. The Dawn soap will do it and you won't have to do anything. Now I put the Dawn soap in about every 2 weeks, and that takes care of it. I don't have to do any scrubbing at all. Now I want to give you one very critical piece of advice. Do not use bleach. Bleach will destroy the plastic parts that are in the tank. They will also deteriorate the gaskets, and over time you will have some leaks, and that will be a major problem. So please, again, do not use bleach in your tank. Dawn soap is going to be just fine. It's not going to hurt the plastic parts. It's not going to hurt the gaskets, and you're not going to have a tank that leaks. I hope that you enjoyed this video today and hope you was able to learn something. And you're going to be able to save some money. Because if you have a problem with the toilet leaking, you can fix this without calling the plumber. Because for less than $20, you can in essence create a brand new toilet. and you'll save a lot of money. If you have to hire a plumber to be able to come out and do this simple project, it's going to cost you probably over $100, and that's a lot of money. So I would suggest being able to do this, and keep this in mind too. If your toilet is leaking, you're going to be using a lot of water, and that water usage is going to really increase your water bill. So you want to be able to double check and make sure that your toilets are not leaking. And you don't always hear the dripping of the water. That's why the tip that I said, using the food color, works extremely well. Just drop a few drops in the tank, wait about 10 or 15 minutes, check the bowl, see if there's any color in there, and if there's color, then you've got a flapper that's leaking and you need to change it. So if you like this video, by all means, give me a thumbs up, subscribe right down there below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So for now, everyone, bye-bye. See you real soon.